Alright, for this video I'm going to be taking a look at the GepRC Cinelog35 V2. I'm going to go over some pros and cons from my experience. This is not a sponsored video. I bought this drone myself about a year ago, so I've gotten a lot of good flying on it. Had to rebuild it a couple times due to crashes, so this is mostly just going to look at the build itself, what I find useful and helpful, and where I would like to hopefully see some improvements and what I would do differently if I had to go back and buy another Cinewhoop FPV drone. So to begin, this was my first real buy after having the DJI Avata. The DJI Avata was my first kind of entry into the FPV world, and so for me this was the next best thing at the time. I was just getting started, so I didn't really know a lot what to look for, what to buy. I did a lot of reviewing online, so watching a lot of YouTube videos, and I kept seeing this drone keep coming up, the GepRC, the Cinelog35 V2. So for me, I was really sticking with the familiarity of having a prop guards, being a 3.5 inch, slightly bigger than the Avata, being able to carry a GoPro, and of course getting a good amount of flying time. Coming from the Avata though over to this type of drone, there was a huge learning curve. So I definitely recommend, if this is getting started with your first drone, you may want to look at getting something that's a little bit more forgiving, like a 5 inch. It doesn't matter the brand. I had a GepRC Mark V that met its demise a couple weeks ago. Now I have the SpeedyBee Master 5 frame, which does a great job as well. But again, coming from the Avata, big learning curve, getting used to flying FPV, and of course having to develop the skills to rebuild it after I crashed. So first off, I bought this as a bind and fly for my DJI 03 Air unit. I added the Express LRS later on, as well as the GPS unit. You could definitely buy it with it, but I chose to not include it when I first got it. I didn't realize I had a need for it. And then of course moving on to different styles of flying and wanting to get a radio, an Express LRS radio, I decided to add in the Express LRS receiver onto the drone as well. So a couple pros to get started. First off, I like that I can put a GoPro on. I found that the GoPro 11 Mini, this is the one I fly with all the time, works really well. It is slightly less weight than a full-size GoPro, so again, it can equal better flying time. So for me, this works out really well. Even though I'm flying with the DJI 03 Air unit, I do all my recording on the GoPro for all the drones that I use. Second, it was fairly easy to add in the upgrades, or what I consider upgrades, the Express LRS receiver, as well as the GPS unit. It already came with a 3D printed GPS holder, so it was pretty easy to add that in, and then of course connected to the flight controller. I do like that it also has the prop guards. Does give you that peace of mind in case you do bump into an object, and of course if you're flying in close proximity to people. For me, I'm mostly doing the mountain bike races as well as some motocross, so having a little bit more security coming close to people or objects, that's definitely a plus for me. Never want to endanger anyone. So and of course for the last pro for me is it is a very good drone. I did originally start using just the 03 camera unit to record, and it does have a lot of stabilization built into the drone, specifically for the 03 unit. So even if you weren't using a GoPro and just wanted to use this, it does have a lot of stabilization for the camera, which comes in handy when filming. You can see right there. Now, as far as some of the cons for this drone, and again, this is just my opinion, what's worked well for me and what hasn't. Part of this was that, like I said, I bought this drone right after flying the Avata for a little while. I spent some time on sim, but obviously I didn't spend enough time on sims before getting out there and flying, so there was that learning curve to use. This drone is not forgiving when it comes to crashes. I've had to replace the prop guards several times, so I actually just ordered a bunch of sets to keep on hand in case that I crash again, and it's bound to happen. So again, a light bump into an object or tree, you might be safe. Hitting the ground, even at low speeds, can increase the chance that the prop guards will break. I have even broken the prop guards just disarming a little too high off the ground, and when it fell face first and broke the prop guards. So that's definitely one of the cons for me, is that it is not the fact that these prop guards break, it's just that they're such a pain to replace. It does require taking apart a good amount of the frame to actually replace just the prop guard. Unfortunately, the way that this is designed is the frame actually mounts, the prop guard actually mounts in between the frame and the motor. So to take off the prop guards, you have to disconnect every motor, and then you can disassemble the prop guards. But that also means you have to take off many of the screws on the bottom as well to access and remove. So it is a pain to have to replace. Again, it's not expensive to put in new prop guards. My crashes, though, tend to not only break the prop guards, and this I've seen these on a lot of videos too and on Reddit, is that it tends to break here on the arms. For whatever reason, usually when you're going in this direction, crash, it would not only break the prop guard, but also would break these arms, which then requires you to basically have to rebuild the entire drone and take apart everything and replace. So the reason why I say this is a con is not only the fact that it's, in my opinion, a lot more time consuming to repair, but also it's not, I wouldn't consider this a starter drone for anyone just starting out in FPV. It does do great filming. It's definitely maneuverable. I do like GepRC and the drones they make, but it's not something starting off that I would recommend to a first-time flyer. I would say stick with the 5-inch. That's a lot easier to repair, replace, and then move into a Cinewhoop. So again, even though this was my first buy, if I had to do it over again, I would get a 5-inch to start with. And like I said, I had the GepRC Mark V, and that was a great drone, easy to repair in the event of a crash, and was very forgiving when it came to crashes as well. So really the only other cons is it was when I decided to add on the receiver for Express LRS. I do have to find places to put it, so that was kind of a pain to try to find locations, and on the frame to mount it. It probably would have been a lot easier had I bought this with the Express LRS instead of doing a bind and fly for the DJI 03 air unit. Otherwise, one other thing that I tend to see a lot with this drone is that it tends to heat up very quickly. Even though it's pretty open on the sides for some airflow for the 03 air unit, this does get very hot very quickly, even when flying. I notice you can't really see right here, but you know, doesn't have a lot of openings for airflow, especially underneath. So it tends to stay pretty hot. So I usually kill the power pretty quickly if I don't need it to just be sitting there. One of the other things that I changed was it does have a non-stick or non-slip battery pad. I ended up cutting it in half and adding some locking Velcro. I use that on all my batteries. It just gives me that extra peace of mind. Not necessarily a con, but for me, this just didn't feel very stable when it came to holding this battery in place. And unfortunately, you can see on my battery strap, I had it a little too long and one of the propellers cut it in half. I just haven't replaced it yet. Otherwise, like I said, it's a very good drone. Don't recommend this to a brand new FPV flyer. Like I said, it's not very forgiving when it comes to crashing, and you will crash a lot as a beginner. I still crash even though I've been flying for a while. And like I said, I don't even do what I would consider freestyle flying. I'm not doing anything crazy or tricks. I'm mostly just doing this to capture, outdoor sports and events. So, but again, you're gonna crash. It's gonna break. So definitely be familiar with how to repair, solder, and getting replacement parts for this. That was a big thing too when I first crashed. It was easy to get a replacement frame. But the motors are the GepRC motors, and I had previously damaged only just one of them. On my first crash, I was able to repair it and without having to replace the entire motor. But unfortunately, at the time, these motors were not stocked at any of the online retailers that I bought from. So I actually had to buy directly from GepRC. Then, of course, that means it's coming from overseas, and it took a little while longer. I ended up just buying a couple spares just in case. But that's something to also keep in mind if you're buying a bind and fly drone, is that replacement parts could be back ordered or just not available locally, so keep that in mind. Otherwise, the only other thing I would recommend is like I do with all my drones, just add the bumper pads on the bottom. Does give me that extra peace of mind when I land on a hard surface, as well as putting some distance between the ground and the propeller. Since this is the Cinewhoop, it will sit almost flat on the ground, and if you're in dirt or rock, it will pick it up and throw it into the propellers. So just having a little bit more buffer between the ground and the drone is definitely a plus, and will save you some headache in the future. All right, hope you found this helpful. Catch you on the next video.